Test, 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 test. Tell me when you're ready. You're ready now. I'm gonna put my clock on here. Yeah, if you want to go ahead and get.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're trying a different microphone because our headset had some problems, and Josiah is working on that right now. But Jerry is going to use a handheld, so Josiah, he's going to use this. And but generally, I just telling Jerry, I don't trust people with handhelds because they tend to do this, and it's. But Jerry's a professional.
Not really, no.
I do want to pray just real quickly for Jerry and also for David and Matt as they drive home. So, God, I want to pray just for Jerry as he presents right now. I pray that you'd give him clarity of thought and help him to be able to cover the things that he needs to present. Pray, Lord, for Dr. McDonald and his son as they drive home. Pray for safety for them. And just pray your continued blessings on this time. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right. Whoa, that's pretty loud. At least it's like, can y'all hear me in the back? Everybody pretty good back there? You know, it's good to be with you. I am Jerry Cox. I'm the director of Family Council in Little Rock, and we also have a homeschool division of our work called the Education Alliance, and we've been doing that since about 1998, helping homeschoolers. We got one full-time employee that does nothing but work on homeschooling all day long. And it's a pretty big job because there are about 35,000 homeschool kids all across the state of Arkansas. In fact, if you had all the homeschoolers in one school district, we would be far and away the biggest school district in the state of Arkansas. In fact, largest district's about 20,000. That'd be Little Rock and some of the big ones in northwest Arkansas. Homeschoolers about 35,000. And let me tell you, we save the state of Arkansas about over $300 million every single year because they don't have to pay to educate the homeschoolers. And in addition, the homeschoolers don't have any school buses. We don't have any buildings to pay for. We don't have any paid school teachers or superintendents or any of those things, and we produce a better product. And so, pretty good. Not too bad for a bunch of moms out here, just knocking it out of the park. Yeah. I want to recognize my wife, Doris, who's with me. She's right there with me every step of the way for 40-some. How many years have we been married? 42 years. And she has raised 4 boys, 5 counting me, she says. And we homeschooled our boys up until about junior high, and then we put them in private school there in Little Rock. Cost us an arm and a leg, but, it was worth it. I really believe not putting our kids in the public schools. I was a public school teacher for about 5 years, right out of college. Taught school over in the Delta, taught high school, taught history, government, taught psychology, taught sociology, did the school yearbook, sponsored the school newspaper. Drove school bus, all kinds of fun things. Then I moved to Little Rock, and I taught at the wealthiest private school in the state called Pulaski Academy, and taught about 6 years there, did some of the same subjects. And then I left teaching, and my wife and I, in the early 90s, started homeschooling our boys, and one of the best decisions we ever made. So also want to recognize Erin Hogan. Everybody look at Erin back there. Erin is from this neck of the woods. Our mom and dad are there with her and her sister. And Erin is on staff with us at Family Council in Little Rock. And so she does amazing work there with us as well. So glad to see familiar faces here. Many of you I probably have crossed paths with along the way. Some of you probably are supporters of our work. Really appreciate that. Couldn't do it without you. I want to know, just kind of for my sake of who I'm talking to, how many of y'all are currently homeschooling kids? How many homeschoolers? Okay, just about everybody. And I'm assuming everybody else is wanting to know something about homeschooling. And let me say right out of the chute, we're not in competition with public school. We want public school to do the best they can do. Here's what we're about. We're about giving parents as many choices as possible for how they're going to educate their kid. That's what we want to do. We want to give parents every choice that's out there so they can pick out what works best for their kid and have at it. So, I want to talk about the homeschool law, but to talk about it, I got to tell you where we have been. Look at your sheets there. Did everybody get one of these? This is my high-tech PowerPoint, okay? It's no electricity required, no batteries. It'll keep running. So if you need one, my wife Doris is up here. Raise your hand if you need one of these. And I may not have time to talk about all this today, and it's okay. But to talk about the homeschool law, I got to tell you where we've been to give you a perspective about where we are. So in about 1983 or 84, there were some people down in Little Rock that were kind of brought before the Department of Human Services and everybody because they were homeschooling their kid. And there ended up being a court case on it. And the judges ruled against homeschooling at that time. And they said, well, there's nothing in the law that says you can't homeschool. There's nothing in the law that says you can. The law is just silent on it. But it does have a line in the law that says every child must be sent to a school. And they said, if they're at home, they're not being sent anywhere. So can't do homeschooling. And I thought that was a silly way to look at it. Somebody said, well, if I send my kid to the shed out back to do their lessons, does that work? Does that qualify? And it was just goofy. And so a friend of mine named Tom Holloman went to the legislature in 1985, and they got the first homeschool law passed. Bill Clinton signed it, and homeschooling became officially legal at that time, but it was not easy. In fact, you had to fill out a big, long notice of intent to homeschool. Once you started the semester, you could not leave the school and start homeschooling. You had to declare at the beginning of each semester. And they tested every homeschool kid every year. And if you fell 8 months below grade level or more, then they could put you back in school, force you to go back into public school, and you'd lose your right to homeschool. And I remember our oldest son, David, having to take that test as a second grader. And I was walking him back to the room to take the test, and I could hear him breathing as a little second grader because he was so afraid that he was going to fail that test. And it was so much stress on kids. But you know what? I don't think they ever found any incompetence among the kids. They all passed every time. But back then, there was just maybe 1,000 homeschoolers, about 500 when the law passed. And so it was a different era at that time. In fact, I'll look at letter E there under number 1, things that were difficult or just about off limits. If you homeschooled your kid and wanted to go back to public school, good luck. They're not giving you any credit. And there was a girl that tried to enroll as a senior over in Clarksville back years ago. She had been homeschooled, and they said, well, you can come here. You're a senior, but you got to go back to 9th grade and pass every semester exam that we gave in every course, or you can't graduate. And so they would just jerk you around really, really bad. It was hard to get into college. They would say, oh, well, yeah, you've been homeschooled, but you got to take a GED and prove that you can do work. And so they treated you like a high school dropout back then. And they would not recognize anything. Hard to get into the military because they said, what is a homeschooler? Hard to get a driver's license because they didn't know what to do with you over at the state police. You certainly couldn't take any classes at the public school. You certainly couldn't go over there and play sports or anything like you can do now. And, letter F down there, I forgot how bad it was. in those early days, see, I go to the Capitol and I lobby for good stuff. You know, we lobby for pro-life bills, but we also lobby for homeschool bills. And I tell you, we would walk into those committee rooms, like the House Education Committee, where they're making policy regarding schools. And these are the people that would be sitting there. You would have people in the Arkansas General Assembly that were former school administrators, that had been school teachers or principals or coaches. They're sitting on the committee. And then you have the Department of Education. They don't like homeschooling. Then you had the Arkansas Association of Administrators. That's your principals and superintendents. Their lobbyist was there, and some of them were there. They didn't like homeschooling. Then you had the School Board Association. They didn't like homeschooling. The Teachers Union, the Arkansas Education Association, even the PTA would come into the committee rooms and testify against homeschool bills. You'd have the Arkansas Activities Association that controls athletics, the National Education Association, the Local Education Association, and then a few individual school superintendents. Now, how would you like to have to deal with all that? But that's what we dealt with. And really for about the first, I would say from 1987 to about 2003, every legislative session, they came after the homeschoolers every time. And they would try to pass a law requiring everybody to do a state-mandated curriculum. Or they would try to pass a law saying that they would limit your rights in different ways. It's been a long time since I've dealt with that. But I just remember every year we would hold our breath and say, okay, what are they going to do this time? And here it would come. And then we would have to go out there and fight them. But you know what? I loved lobbying with homeschoolers because if I would sound the alarm, they would come to the Capitol and they would make their voice heard. And you know what? We were able to hold off every one of those attacks. We were able to fight them back, not because we were powerful, but because homeschoolers were. And so the attacks came for years and years, and then finally they quit. And it's almost like there was just a quiet there for a few years. And then, along about 2015, we kind of stood up and said, okay, I think we can go on the offensive now and start gaining homeschool rights. So we got rid of testing. We abbreviated the notice of intent. We got the ability to do sports in the public schools, and we began to push back. And we're still pushing back even today. So thanks to you, we're on the offensive on that. Now, somebody might say, well, what are the requirements for homeschooling in Arkansas? I don't want to get too loud and say, well, not much, but I want to say quietly, not very much. There's just not much you have to do. You have to complete a notice of intent to homeschool by the 15th of August each year, or when you pull out of public school during the year, you have to complete a notice of intent. You do it on paper and give it to your superintendent, or you can mail it to your superintendent, or you can go online at the Department of Education website and fill out the form and hit submit. And at that point, you are a legal homeschool. That's it. You are a legal homeschool. And you might say, well, what am I supposed to teach? Anything you want to. When am I supposed to teach it? Anytime you want to. How long am I supposed to teach it? For as long as you want to. And you might say, well, you mean I could have school at 5 o'clock in the morning? Yes. 5 o'clock in the evening? Yes. Could I do school in the summertime? Yes. You're free to do pretty much whatever you want to. And a lot of people don't appreciate that because in some states, they really get after you when it comes to wanting to know, just root around in your business. And Arkansas really is pretty free in that way. I would caution everybody, though, and say educational neglect is child abuse. And if if they get you for that, they can take your kids away. So I would advise you to go ahead and educate your kids. But what you teach them, how you teach them, when you teach them, all that, that's all up to you. It's a lot of freedom. The next thing is the requirements for transferring from a public school to a home school. A lot of times we get calls at our office along about October. People put their kids in public school, and along about October, everything's come unraveled, and they say, this ain't working. I need to take my kid out. How do I do this? And I say, well, get your notice of intent, just like you would any other time. Fill out that notice of intent. Give it to your superintendent. Tell him that you're going to transfer out. And at that point, superintendent legally has a decision that he can make. One is he can salute and say, adios, go in peace, hope you have a good life. Or he can say, the law says I can make you wait 5 calendar days because I think you're just a hothead and you need to think about this a little bit. And so he can make you wait 5 calendar days. After that, you can leave unless you've got some of the school's property, like a tablet. You got to turn it in. Unless your kid broke all the windows out of the school building and he's under disciplinary action, then you got to stay until the disciplinary action is over with. Unless your kid has excessive unexcused absences, then you have to stay until that's taken care of. And that could rock on for most of the semester, but at the end of the semester, you can walk with no questions asked. So we've had some strange situations. There was a superintendent in around Searcy. He said, well, I don't know if I'm going to allow you to homeschool. Superintendent said that. You have to meet with me before you can homeschool. And there were moms that actually went and met with that man and came out of there crying because he would just tongue lash them and say, you're going to ruin your kid, and I can't believe you're doing this, and you're not qualified to teach, and all this. And he would just beat them up. And we kept telling him, you don't have to go talk to that man. The law says you fill out the notice of intent, you abide by the rest of the law. You don't have to get anybody's permission. He said, well, I've got an extra form here I want you to fill out. We said, no, you don't have to fill out his form. The state mandates all that. And so don't be surprised if you get kind of somebody who's an outlier as a superintendent who wants you to go stand on your head on the parking lot before you can homeschool your child. And so we've seen that pretty often with them trying to get in the way. The other thing is, jumping on down to number 4, requirements for participation in athletics or interscholastic activities. Y'all know about the Tim Tebow law? You've heard about that a little bit? The way it works is homeschool kids can go over to the public school and do interscholastic activities. And my wife, Doris, was reading my notes on the way up here. She said, what is an interscholastic activity regulated by the Arkansas Activities Association? Well, that's football, basketball, track, baseball. But it's also golf, tennis, cross country, and it's also cheerleading, chess club, science fairs, band, choir, orchestra. They regulate all those. And so we got to looking and said, they got all these great programs that are paid for with tax dollars right over there at the public school. Why shouldn't a homeschool kid be able to go over there and play the violin or sing in the choir or play football or be on the basketball team? It took us years to get that law passed because the public school people fought it every step of the way. And I remember, Keith, one year out there at the education committee, There was a little boy who was a 7th grader, and his mama brought him all the way to Little Rock from Crossett because he wanted to play junior high football at Crossett. And he sat on the front row there in the committee, and those men around that and women around that committee table were voting on the Tim Tebow law, and it failed. And it failed because one particular representative would not step up and vote for it. And that little boy was sitting on the front row, and when that law failed, he began to cry. And he looked at that state representative and he said, "Why didn't you vote for that?" And I watched that grown man run out of that committee room and not want to face that little 7th grade boy, because all he wanted to do was play. So that's all he wanted to do, is to be able to play. And I can still see that in my memory. But we eventually got the law passed. And so now homeschoolers can go over to the public school and they can participate. If I were going to do that, I'd tell them in probably the summertime at the school that I wanted to come over. You got to take a norm reference test and score at least the 30th percentile. And then you got to work things out with the principal and the coach and all that, or the band director or the choir director. But they have to let you in. They can't refuse you. It's not their choice. They have to let you participate. And so that's something that some people want to do. Now, let's flip the page, cruise on over to taking classes at the public school. You know, for years, it's been legal for a public school to allow a homeschooler to come over and take English, take algebra, take chemistry, whatever. But the schools were saying, "Oh, no, I don't believe we can do that, or our insurance won't cover you while you're over here." So finally, we got a law passed that said schools may allow students to come over. And then a few years later, we got one that says schools shall allow students to come over and take classes. And so we've kind of made some progress there. And you have to, of course, meet the prerequisites for the class, and you have to abide by the rules and take the test and do all the other things that you're supposed to do. But a lot of people don't know that they can actually take classes over at the local public school. And some local public schools don't know that either. So some days you have to educate them a little bit on what is permitted. But that's something that you can do, is take academic classes. Now, here's something that's let me look at number 6 here. Okay, we're getting calls now about students that want to do, especially little kids, that want to do extracurricular activities with their local public school. Like maybe, let's say the local elementary school is going to go to the zoo in Little Rock or something. And it's actually okay. It's legal for them to allow a homeschooler to hop on the bus and go to the zoo, take advantage of the extracurricular activity. But a lot of schools are afraid to do that because there's nothing that says they can do it in the law. So probably in January, we're going to go to the legislature and try to get something passed that says, hey, it's okay for a public school to let a homeschooler hop on the yellow school bus, go down to the trip or whatever it is the activity is. Those are not sanctioned by AAA, so they're not covered by the Tim Tebow law. Now, look at number 7. I want to take this one by one. Improvements in the law that have made a big difference. I've been involved, I believe, in every one of these because I've been doing this since I was 8 years old. But like 30, this is my 33rd year, Keith, I think, something like that. So been around it a while. But first of all, improvements there, number 7. Passing a law to enable homeschoolers to transfer from a public school to a homeschool during the semester. Used to, if your child was being assaulted, bullied, shot at, whatever in the public school, you could not leave and go homeschool until the end of the semester. And we had real bad problems with one of the school districts where boys were harassing a junior high girl out at her locker every day. And they said, we are not going to let you out. We're not, you can't leave. And so finally we had an attorney write a letter to the superintendent and say, they said, okay, if you're going to hold this girl in school, then you need to sign a letter saying you will personally be responsible for her safety if you're going to make her stay here and be messed with these boys. You know what? He found a way to let her go. Because he didn't want to guarantee her safety there. And so, but generally speaking, they would not let you out. Now they have to. B, passing a law to allow parents, look at that word, provide to the parent to provide the homeschool rather than conduct it. That was one word we changed in the law, but let me tell you, think about that. If you have to conduct the homeschool, that means you as the parent have got to stand there and be there and teach everything. Grandma can't do it. You can't have a co-op. You can't do a bunch of online stuff. You got to do it. Once it's you provide it, you as the parent don't have to teach a thing. You can get grandma to do it. You can have a co-op. You can have the smartest guy on earth who's a rocket scientist come and teach physics or whatever you want to do. It opened up tremendous possibilities there. Letter C, passing a law eliminating all state-mandated testing. Whew, took us 30 years to do that, but we finally got rid of it. But you know what? They tested homeschoolers for 30 years. You know what they found? Homeschoolers are doing better than public school in every grade, every year, for 30 years in a row. I had a guy at the Department of Education tell me, he said, I don't know why we're testing the homeschoolers. We already know what's going to happen. They're going to do better. But it was required, so they kept on doing it. Then passing a law to allow athletics, Tebow law. Letter E, working with AAA to get have homeschoolers participate in science fairs. But guess what? I think they forgot. And now I think the homeschoolers have been squeezed out of the science fairs. So rather than having a gentleman's agreement with AAA, I think we're going to need to go pass a law, Aaron. You'll get to work on it. And we'll just say, you can't keep a homeschooler out of a science fair. And you know what they said? They said, well, those homeschoolers, they get to work on that volcano more than the public school kids, or whatever it is. And they fussed about it. They said, they get to work on it more than our people do. I'm like, it's a competition. If I go out here and I exercise more and I can outrun everybody on the football field, then so be it. It's all about competition there. Also, passing a law to allow special needs students to be homeschooled. Used to, if your kid had any special needs, no, you can't homeschool them. They would keep you from that. And then allowing special needs students to access federal programs. That's just money that was available. Turn the page, letter H. Allowing homeschoolers to receive a voucher to pay for the ACT test in the 11th grade. And that's brand new. So that's something that you'd have to check with your school about. But the school hands out vouchers to all the public school 11th graders, and that covers their ACT. And we worked with the Department of Ed and said, why are y'all not letting us have those vouchers? And they said, okay, well, you can. And so there's not a law, but they're supposed to allow you to have the voucher so you don't have to pay for the ACT. Also, we passing a law to reduce the amount of information required on the notice of intent. They used to want to know what the education level of the parent is. But there was no law that applied to that. They just wanted to know. And I think, why do y'all want to know what the education of the parent is? They really didn't know. It just was on there. And so we got a bunch of that stuff taken off. Then letter J, allowing homeschoolers to take the AP test and the PSAT at the public school. If you're a homeschooler doing AP courses, maybe the only place you can take the AP test is over at your local public school. And they were running homeschoolers off, not letting them come in and take the test. You still have to pay for it, but you just needed a place to go take it. And so we worked that out with the Department of Education. The letter K, allowing homeschoolers to get access to the Governor's Distinguished Scholarship. Y'all know how much that scholarship is worth? Totally free college education. Totally free. Pay all the tuition at any state school in Arkansas if you have a 32 or better on the ACT. But you know what they were doing? They would look at the homeschoolers and they say, well, what's that homeschooler's rank in their class? Well, they don't have one, or they're number one. They didn't know what to do. So they knocked 10 points off of 100% score right out of the chute for every homeschooler. They dropped them 10 points. And so a lot of really smart homeschoolers were not getting that scholarship. Finally, we had to get the Homeschool Legal Defense Association to threaten to sue the state of Arkansas. And they said, okay, we'll find a way to accommodate y'all. And now, as far as I know, the homeschoolers are being treated fairly when it comes to those scholarships. Then moving on down, passing a law that affirms that homeschoolers can take academic courses at the public school. And that says with permission. That's not right. They can do it no matter what. Then we created a Standard Education Alliance transcript. Let me tell you a funny little story. Years ago, before we ever started doing transcripts, like an official form for people, there was a lady that was trying to get her son, her homeschooler, into Pulaski Tech, I believe it was. And so she walked in with her portfolio, all of her papers and stuff, and put them on the desk. And they said, we don't know what to do with you, lady. We've never seen a homeschooler. We don't know what to do with this. No, you can't be admitted to Pulaski Tech. And so she went away, and she went down to Kinko's, got some really nice paper, bought herself a gold seal, created an amazing-looking transcript that had gold on it, had a title, homeschool, and had all the grades on there, signatures on it, and all that stuff. Went back in, and they looked at it and said, wow, we've never seen one of these before. You qualify for a scholarship. We'll take you in. And so I thought, well, we can do that. We can make a transcript. And so we've been cranking out transcripts, and people send us the grades, and we put it on secure paper, and I sign it, and we put an embossing thing on there and all that. And U of A, lots of places, they're like, yeah, that's the one. We accept that one, and we don't do any others. So it's been real interesting just how that whole process works. Then also, let's see, where are we? I guess I'll jump down to end there. The Arkansas State Police, we work with them on getting driver's licenses, passing a law to prevent local public schools from levying their own additional requirements, passing a law clarifying the process for transferring from homeschool to a public school and vice versa. Generally requiring public schools to accept credits, requiring public schools that offer college courses to allow homeschoolers to have equal access to those, and so forth and so on there. Now, let me. I think I'm going to go ahead and pause right now, and maybe give you all a chance to ask me some questions, or if I went ahead and put some questions on there for you. If you want to ask them, I'll answer them because I already know the answers because I wrote them. But anyway, if y'all have questions or whatever, I'll do my best. Yes, ma'am.
So with just the general signing of the yearly opt-out,
The notice of intent? Yes.
So just doing that all for high school every year, what is the diploma situation?
Well, we do diplomas at our office. We do 2 graduations. We do one in Searcy at Harding at the Benson Auditorium, and we'll usually have maybe around anywhere, like this year is a low number, but anywhere from 70 to about 115 graduates. and maybe around 1,000 people will come. And we do a diploma, caps and gowns, commencement speaker, the whole thing. The Education Alliance, if you look on the back of your letter, your handout, just go to the very, very, very back, flip it all, just turn it over, I think. It should be our info. See, that's us. Yes, ma'am. And Lisa Crook is the director. She runs it. I'm her boss, but Lisa's actually the one doing the work. So I just get to talk about it. Aaron? Don't tell it. No. The governor of Arkansas signs these diplomas if they participate in Searcy graduation or the one in Northwest Arkansas. That's one of the bonuses. And ASA has been very, very gracious to us to I'll tell you the truth, they bear his signature. They got a fancy machine over there with a pen. And so they load those diplomas in there, and they have his name on there. I don't believe ASA actually sat and signed every one and read the name and all that. Maybe he did, but they bear his signature. I don't want to be dishonest. But nobody else gets that. I don't know of anybody else that gets that. So that's been really good. And hopefully Sarah Huckabee, if she gets to be governor, hopefully she'll be willing to have her name on there as well. What else? Yes, sir.
Is there any effort to get a portion of the education tax diverted for
Oh,
homeschooling?
don't. You're fixing to start a fight, because here's the thing. I think homeschoolers need some money. I really do. But then a lot of people say, if the money flows, the long arm of the state goes right behind it. And so I don't know the answer to that. I've dealt with it for 30 years, and I still don't know the answer. I think if we take a whole bunch of money from the state, they're eventually going to want to herd all the homeschoolers up in a pen and brand them and check their teeth and make them take a test or do stuff. And so I don't know. I don't know. There's a bunch of school choice discussion going on, and some of those will give homeschoolers a third of the allotment of money that normally goes to a public school kid, which would be about $3,000 or $4,000 a year, which would be significant. But I'm conflicted on it myself. If I thought we could keep the government from messing with you, then I'd say, great, let's do it. But if I feel like the government's going to come in and mess with you and try to tell you what to teach and all that, then that worries me. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. So
See, I told you we were going to start a fight.
that's what we were dealing with in California, because we were in a charter homeschool program. So basically, you do get funds. They can only go towards certain vendors,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be really beneficial. But the other part of it was, yes, we had to have the government involved, because we still had to have our kids doing STAR testing and all that kind of state-required stuff already. On top of that, it created these bizarre industries around homeschooling communities that basically functioned as like a homeschool co-op,
Mm-hmm.
but charged $300 a month.
I see.
Because
Wow.
the vendors, they knew that homeschoolers had that state money.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really kind of weird and
Yeah.
icky. So I'm kind of conflicted
Yeah.
also. But
Yeah, lots of ways to look at that. I probably have time for maybe one or two more questions, if anybody has any more or a comment. Okay, I see two. Over here, and then Aaron, I'll let you be last.
So, on the part that says about like neglecting, if somebody just wanted to say, "Oh, you're not teaching your child, I'm trying to turn you in," is it good to like keep your child's schoolwork over the years, where you can show, "Hey, they
Yes.
did this," or like how would they go about proving that you didn't neglect? Like, would they test your child? Like, how can they prove that?
Well, the first thing they're going to ask you is, do you have a notice of intent on file with the state? And if you do, much of the time, social services will say, okay, we're not going to mess with you because you've registered. And a lot of people want to get rid of that form, but I keep telling them, I said, having that form, it's not that hard to fill it out, and it really kind of is an affirmative thing. People say, are you doing your job? You say, well, I'm registered with the state, and most of the time they'll back away. But then the next step would be to have proof that your child is being educated. You know, maybe if they've taken the standardized test, if you've got schoolwork, test results. I mean, with our kids, you know, we made some report cards, you know, just made a report card and put their name on it and signed it and put that in a file. So it's not hard to create a paper trail, but, you know, the more you have that way, the safer you're going to be. But I would advise you not to let a social worker come in your house unless they have a warrant. And I would say I'll be glad to talk to you out here on the porch. But if they start wanting to come in and look in your refrigerator and interview your kids separate and all that, then you have a right to object. Just the same way it would if I came to your house today. I want to come look in your refrigerator. You could just tell me no, unless there's a police officer there with a warrant. But if y'all get into a situation like that, call us and let us kind of help you with that some. And if you're a member of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, they will actually represent you free of charge with lawyers. And I can't remember, Aaron, if it's $120 a year, something like that, to be a member of Homeschool Legal Defense. But some people do join that just in case they do need legal representation. But I really couldn't tell you very, very few situations where homeschoolers were doing their part where they got jerked around very much by DHS. Aaron, last question. I don't know. You're not supposed to ask me questions I don't know the answer to. I think it's about the same, really. I think if you get a tax credit, those people, you know, those people on those education committees, they're going to look over the top of their glasses and say, you guys are homeschoolers, you're getting a benefit because the state of Arkansas is not getting this money, and so we need to regulate y'all. So it might be a step less temptation to regulate, but I think at the end, they're not stupid. They know they're helping out the homeschoolers. And see, they're going to holler and say, oh, these people, they just got these kids babysitting and working in the chicken house anyway. You know, and you know, it's like, we're going to give them money, you know, to do that. And I mean, y'all should come to the Capitol and hear just the wild stuff. I mean, when we were trying to get homeschooling deregulated a few years ago, people said, oh, well, these homeschoolers are out selling drugs. They're out on the street corner selling drugs. And or they're going to be out there selling drugs. I think that was it. And I'm like, I don't think they're the ones doing most of the drug dealing. I think it's somebody else. So anyway, hey, it's fun talking to y'all. I appreciate y'all listening. And we are, like I said, the Education Alliance. It's a division of Family Council. It's in Little Rock. Jerry Cox is the head of it. Lisa Crook runs it, does all the work. You can call us anytime about anything related to homeschooling, and we will do our best to help you out. Okay? I don't think I did much to make up the lost time, but maybe we're not too much more behind.
All right. No, we're not too bad. It's only just after 11. All right, so we're going to take another 5-minute break, and we'll start back up at, we'll say, 10 after 11. And then Melissa will give us some tips and tricks as to how to make this stuff work. So thank you, Jerry, for your presentations. Very helpful information. And I'll just say this, he's not exaggerating. If you have any question and call them, they will help you. It's not some highfalutin corporate organization that you got to go through 16 different channels.
Just call Aaron.
All right, so take a break, go get some more stuff to eat, use the bathroom, whatever. Be back here at 10.